It's officially Combine Week, and it doesn't matter if you watch every single college football game and have a deep understanding of all of the players this year, or you don't know anything about any draft eligible players this year and you're just now getting caught up. Combine Week is where we all learn a lot about a ton of the draft eligible players. Even myself, who's been scouting players since the beginning of January, will start to learn a little bit more. And I'm here to help you get caught up on the action and to give you 5 things that I'll be keeping an eye on this week. The top storyline for me at this year's Combine has to be who is going to be the QB2 behind Fernando Mendoza. And Mendoza has already announced that he will not throw at the Combine, which really isn't that shocking. These days, there's a lot of the top guys who, if they believe they're going to go really high in the draft, they're not going to participate at the Combine. And Mendoza is likely to be the #1 player selected. So instead of throwing at the Combine to a bunch of receivers he's never worked with, instead, he's going to work out at Indiana's Pro Day and throw to his own wide receivers. And that probably isn't going to affect the decision that the Las Vegas Raiders will be making, but what else happens at the Combine with the quarterbacks could ultimately affect teams behind Las Vegas, like maybe the New York Jets. Right now, it is believed that Ty Simpson will be the QB2 in this year's draft class. The quarterback out of Alabama is looked at as the QB2, but really behind Mendoza, there isn't a surefire thing, or it doesn't feel like it at least. And for Ty Simpson at the end of the 2025 season, heading into the playoffs, he was banged up, and Mendoza's Indiana Hoosiers beat Alabama and Ty Simpson at the Rose Bowl. Ty Simpson needs to show that he is healthy, which all of his medical evaluations will absolutely do, but we want to see how he works out on the field. How does the arm look in the deep passes? How does the accuracy look? How does he command the field with a bunch of guys that he has never worked with before? There's a lot of things that people are going to be keeping an eye on with Ty Simpson. And given the fact that nobody has really established themselves as the QB2 in this draft, Ty Simpson has an opportunity to showcase a ton of things to NFL teams that might be willing to draft him in the first round. Storyline number 2 is whether or not we're going to have more answers than question marks about the top defenders coming into this year's draft after the Combine wraps up. 2 of the top defensive players in this year's draft who are expected to potentially go in the top 5 have some question marks around them, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the Combine to maybe give everyone some more answers so we don't have to question what's going to happen with them. For instance, Arvell Reese is my #1 overall player in this year's draft class. The linebacker out of Ohio State is an absolute animal at the linebacker position. But there are a lot of scouts who don't want him to play linebacker. They want him to play edge instead and really become a guy that gets after the quarterback. At Ohio State, he did a lot of both of those things. He would play on the edge and get after the quarterback. He would blitz from middle linebacker, but he would also play off the ball linebacker as well, meaning that he might be used in space at times, or he would be used in the run game quite a bit. Arvell Reese really, when you watch him on tape, can do it all. But if there's a team out there that doesn't want him to do it all and just wants to get after the quarterback, is he really worth drafting that high? Some team out there has to realize after the Combine that this guy is an athletic freak that should be utilized as such. And Ruben Bain, the edge rusher out of Miami, is another guy people are keeping an eye on, because when you look at the college production, when you look at his tape, he looks like a guy that really honestly is worthy of being drafted #1 overall, if it wasn't for Fernando Mendoza probably going #1 overall. But when you take a look at Ruben Bain's measurements, people are going to be worried, especially scouts, because his arms are pretty short compared to average edge rushers in past NFL draft class. And you know what? If you want to talk about short arm measurements, why don't you ask Aiden Hutchinson how that turned out? If you go back to 2022, Aiden Hutchinson was coming off a fantastic final season at the University of Michigan. He ended up finishing as a Heisman finalist that year as an edge defender, something you typically don't see, and a lot of people felt like he was going to go #1 overall to the Jacksonville Jags. But then when he did his measurements at his pro day and even at the combine, his arm length was a little bit shorter than what you would see for an average edge rusher in the NFL. And Aiden Hutchinson has talked about it quite a bit. He was fully under the impression that Jacksonville was going to be drafting him #1 overall. And then all of a sudden he said that changed for whatever reason. And Jacksonville decided on draft night to go with Travion Walker out of Georgia instead, in part because of the arm length of Aiden Hutchinson. We can safely say that Aiden Hutchinson has been a much better player up to this point than what Travion Walker has been. And that's not any Lions or U of M bias there. That is the honest truth. Aiden Hutchinson is one of the top edge rushers in the entire NFL. And sometimes if your arms are a little bit shorter, who cares? If you have the motor and drive like Ruben Bain does, it's not going to matter in the long run. And I'm excited to see Ruben Bain, even with short arms, showcase just how good he is athletically, so a team will bank on him. This is a storyline during every single combine, and realistically, it never really matters when it comes to NFL production. But will the 40 record be broken this year? Just a couple of years ago, Xavier Worthy set the record for the fastest 40 at the combine, running a 4.21. This year, the challenger for that record could be Brennan Thompson out of Mississippi State. Thompson is a former high school track star that absolutely blew people away in the 100 meters, but he decided to play football and put that speed to use in a different format at Mississippi State. He is definitely expected to be one of the guys that could challenge Xavier Worthy's 4.21 this combine. Does it happen? I don't know. It seems like every single season someone says, oh, this guy or that guy is going to break the 40 this year. And always we seem to be let down outside of Xavier Worthy a couple of years ago. If you're looking to have a little bit of fun while watching the combine this year, our friends over at Underdog have started placing their predictions for the fastest 40 times for the top athletes at this year's combine. And if you want to try and guess higher or lower than those 40 times, then come on over to Underdog and join us. For instance, Brennan Thompson, who we just talked about, is predicted to run a 4.32 by Underdog. And based on the information that we just discussed, I'm gonna go lower than 4.32 over on Underdog. And if you wanna follow that and put in some other 40 predictions as well, download the Underdog app, create a new account using code Headliners, because when you play in your first $5 contest, you're going to get up to $75 in bonus contests to go along with that. And the best part about this, Underdog just announced that they've restructured the payouts for 2- and 3-man tickets. So now you get even more potential when you place your tickets on Underdog. Storyline number 4 that I'll be watching at the combine is whether or not any of the wide receivers challenge Jordan Tyson for the wide receiver 1 spot in this year's draft class. Jordan Tyson would far and away probably be the wide receiver 1 in this draft class if it wasn't for a messy medical history. And of course, medicals will be done while he is at the combine, so we'll see if anything were to leak from that information. But for Jordan Tyson, what he does on the field during the combine will go a long way to showing everybody he's healthy and he's ready to contribute right away. Remember a couple of years ago when people were debating Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze? This year, it kind of feels like that. Jordan Tyson is just expected to be the wide receiver 1. But then right behind him, Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, both of those guys absolutely could end up being the #1 wide receiver drafted. And what they do at the combine will also go a long way towards helping their draft stock and maybe being the first wide receiver taken. For Carnell Tate, is he going to be a guy that can showcase his ability all over the field? He led the NCAA in touchdowns of 20 or more yards this past season, but can he showcase his route running on those short and intermediate routes? Mekhi Lemon is not known as the fastest wide receiver in this draft class. Can his 40 time go a long way towards helping teams that need a wide receiver show that he can be a wide receiver 1 type player? But then there's some guys that are under the radar as well that absolutely could show out. Denzel Boston may be one of the best contested catch wide receivers in this entire draft class. Omar Cooper Jr. has been compared to like an early Deebo Samuel for what he did at IU. What can he showcase while he's there? And even KC Concepcion out of Texas A&M. He could return value right away as a kick or a punt returner. But does he have the skills needed to be an NFL wide receiver right away, or at least an impact NFL wide receiver right away? There's a lot of questions to be answered at the top of the wide receiver position. One that could be very deep this year. Does position value matter? That's going to be number 5 on my storylines for this year's combine, because 2 of the top players in this draft, Jeremiah Love at running back out of Notre Dame, Caleb Downs at safety out of Ohio State, are at 2 of the top position when it comes to position values. Running backs and safeties are typically undervalued in draft class because nobody really wants to use a high pick on a position that they feel like they don't really need to get an impact player at, like other positions early on. Jeremiah Love finished at number 3 in this year's Heisman voting, and he had a terrific final season at Notre Dame, and he is seen as an all-around running back that can make a contribution to a team right away, whether it be on the ground or through the air. He is the type of complete running back that teams typically spend up for, like a Saquon Barkley, like a Bijan Robinson or a Jahmyr Gibbs a couple of years ago. When you look at what he can do, he actually might be a little bit more of an impact running back than what Ashton Jeanty was, who was also drafted very high last year. But it always feels like when a running back is drafted really high that the pundits will argue that it was never worth it. There's got to be a team out there that watches Jeremiah Love on film and then at the combine and says to themselves, I need this guy on my team. I don't care where I pick him. And Caleb Downs was seen as one of, if not the top defender in all of football entering the 2025 season. When he returned to Ohio State, it was a huge return for them. He was seen as a guy that honestly could have been in the Heisman voting as well. Did he have that great of a season? No, but he is a guy that is utilized all over the field. He is a big time hitter. He can defend players in the pass. He can come up and he can stop the run. He can go man on man. He can go zone. It doesn't matter. Caleb Downs can do it all. The former transfer from Ole Miss is a guy that is seen as a Swiss Army knife. And you can see the impact that a really good safety can have on a team right away. Nick Emenwari this past season for the Seattle Seahawks as a rookie was a huge impact player. What about a guy like Kyle Hamilton, who was drafted really high a few years ago by the Baltimore Ravens out of Notre Dame? He's also a guy very similar to Caleb Downs. He can do anything on the field. Wherever you need him, this guy can go. But a lot of times when you see the safety tag on a player, you don't really value them as high. But what if I were to tell you that Caleb Downs isn't a safety? What if I could tell you he could play as a safety, as a nickel corner, as an outside corner, even as a linebacker at times? The guy is a true hybrid that can play all over the field and will make an impact on a defense right away. And you'll see that when he showcases what he can do at the combine. So if you've made it this far in the video, I need a couple of things out of you. Number 1, if you feel like you're tuned into this year's draft class and you've also been doing your research, is there a player that I didn't mention today that you feel is under the radar that we should be talking about a little bit more? Let me know down in the comments below. Or if you're somebody that doesn't pay any attention to college football, it's okay. There's no problem with that whatsoever. That's why we are here, to help educate you on everybody, because I know it's hard to find time to dive into all of these players. So ask me a question down below about this year's draft class, about a specific player. Maybe there's a player for one of your favorite college teams you want to know more about. Let me know down in the comments below. But everybody, regardless of what you think about football or college football or the draft, it doesn't matter. Hit the like button for me, subscribe if you're new here, turn on the bell notifications, hype the video if you're able to, but more importantly, stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game.